The twins stepped into the crosswalk, and my fiancée stopped breathing before I did. I had one hand on the steering wheel and the other resting near the gearshift when I saw them under the white stripes and red brake lights. Two small bodies in matching navy coats, holding the hand of a woman I had buried in memory, because that had been easier than admitting I never understood why she vanished. Elena Whitmore moved through the crosswalk with her head slightly lowered, one dark curl loose against her cheek, the kind of detail my body recognized before my mind allowed her name to form. Traffic hissed around us. Neon from the pharmacy window cut across her face in fragments. And then one of the twins turned. My chest locked. The boy had my eyes. Not close. Not maybe. Mine. Celeste Armand went rigid beside me. I felt it before I looked at her. The sudden stillness. The expensive perfume turning sharp in the closed car. The silence that only happens when a future changes shape in real time. I had been taking her home after dinner, after champagne, after a conversation about guest lists and security details and a summer wedding estate outside the city. 10 seconds earlier, my life had been arranged in clean lines. Then Elena looked up. She saw me through the windshield, and all the color left her face. The little girl tugged at her hand, distracted by a balloon caught on a street sign. The countdown light began to flash. A delivery van swung too fast around the corner, tires spitting over wet paint, its nose cutting into the turn like the driver had decided the crosswalk belonged to him. I was out of the car before Celeste said my name. The door slammed behind me. Horns burst. I crossed 2 lanes with headlights glaring into my eyes and reached the children just as the van skidded too close. Elena froze for one fatal beat, not from carelessness, but recognition, shock, history, all of it hitting at once. I grabbed the boy against my chest and shoved Elena and the little girl backward with my free arm. The van screamed past, so close its mirror clipped my sleeve. The girl cried out. Elena stumbled hard against me. The boy clutched my jacket and buried his face. The whole street seemed to pause. If you've ever seen 1 second split a life in two, you know the feeling. I set the boy down carefully, but kept my arm in front of all 3 of them, as if the traffic itself might come back for another try. Elena's breathing was ragged. Her hand shook around the little girl's fingers. Up close, she looked nothing like the woman who had once walked beside me without fear. She looked thinner, tired in the bones, beautiful in the way truth is beautiful when it has suffered and survived. Roman, she said. Just that. Celeste was beside us a moment later in heels not meant for running, anger and disbelief battling across her face. She looked from Elena to the twins to me, and I watched the first crack form. Not in the engagement ring, not in the promise, but in the certainty she thought she had about the man she was marrying. Who are they? Celeste asked. No one answered fast enough. The little boy turned in my arms before I realized I was still half holding him steady by the shoulder. He stared straight at me with solemn, unnerving focus, as if children could feel blood before adults admitted it. The girl hid behind Elena's coat, but kept peeking around the fabric at my watch, the steel one my father used to wear. Elena noticed that too. Her eyes dropped to it, then lifted back to mine, carrying years of silence I had not been invited into. The crossing signal died. Cars waited. Drivers stared. Elena pulled both children close, and that movement told me more than any explanation could have. Not fear of traffic, fear of me, or fear of what seeing me would start. Why didn't you tell me? The air inside the car changed before a single door opened. Warm leather, city exhaust, and the fading perfume of a celebration ride were suddenly cut by something sharper. Recognition, old and unwelcome, moving through Roman veil like a blade under a rib. Outside the windshield, brake lights burned red across the avenue, and Elena Whitmore stood trapped in that wash of color with both children gathered against her coat. Inside, beside him, Celeste Armand did not miss the shift. Very little escaped her when silence turned heavy. A horn sounded somewhere behind them. Roman did not move. Celeste turned slowly in her seat, one hand still resting near the diamond on her left ring finger, the stone catching the dashboard glow like cold fire. She had spent enough time around power to know when it stopped being social and became personal. What she saw in Roman's face was not curiosity. It was impact, not the kind a man rehearsed. The kind that broke through without permission. Who is she? The question landed softly, but nothing about it was gentle. Roman kept his eyes on the crosswalk. Elena had already drawn the twins nearer, one child tucked to each side, her shoulders angled not toward escape, but toward protection. Celeste followed his stare and saw what he was seeing now with full attention. The shape of the children's faces, the dark hair, the age that made every missing year feel measurable. 4, maybe 5. Not infants. Not rumors. Time made flesh. Then Celeste saw the watch. Not on Roman. On one of the twins, wrapped loose around a tiny wrist like a child had slipped into a legacy too large to carry. Steel. Old-fashioned. Masculine. Impossible to mistake if you had heard the family stories often enough. Roman's father's watch had vanished years ago, and Roman wore another now. But blood recognized symbols before the mind allowed the truth to stand upright. The room inside the car went emotionally silent, even with traffic noise all around them. Roman, Celeste said, and this time his name was not an invitation. It was a demand for honesty. He finally looked at her, and for the first time that night, the future they had been driving toward no longer seemed to sit neatly ahead of them. It had split. One lane led to the townhouse prepared for an engaged couple. The other led backward through every unanswered thing he had buried under work, force, and discipline. Celeste saw him calculating. That hurt more than a lie would have. You know her, she said. Roman's jaw tightened once. I did. Did, past tense. Clean on the surface. Dirty underneath. Celeste looked back through the windshield and studied Elena with a colder precision now. She was not searching for beauty or threat. She was searching for history. The answer stood in the way Elena held the twins, in the way Roman had gone still, in the way neither of them looked surprised by pain, only by timing. Some truths arrived too late to be called revelations. They arrived as evidence. A police siren wailed 3 blocks away. The crossing signal began its countdown again for the next wave of pedestrians. Were you going to tell me, Celeste asked, that your ex just appeared in front of us with 2 children who look like you? Roman's hand tightened around the steering wheel until his knuckles blanched. He was a man feared in rooms where other men negotiated with bodyguards at their backs. Yet here, boxed inside a black car under streetlights, he had no useful weapon at all. Not against this. Not against arithmetic. Not against a woman who had just realized she might have accepted a ring while standing on a floor built over omission. I didn't know, he said. Celeste held his gaze for 2 long seconds, measuring not just the words but the fracture inside them. He might be telling the truth. That possibility did not comfort her. It made everything worse. Because if he had known, he had deceived her. Streetlights spilled across the windshield in pale bars, turning the inside of the car into alternating strips of gold and shadow. I could still feel the imprint of Celeste Armand's stare on the side of my face, cool and exacting, when the woman at the crosswalk stopped pretending distance could save her. Elena Whitmore had already gathered one small hand in each of hers and guided the twins toward the far curb, but then she paused. Not because of traffic, because I had opened the door. Cold air rushed in. Horns muttered somewhere down the block. The city kept moving with the indifference only a city could manage, while my life stood under a red hand signal and refused to obey it. I stepped out onto the asphalt, the shine of recent rain still clinging to the paint of the crosswalk, and for the first time in years I watched Elena turn back toward me by choice. That changed everything. She looked older than the memory I had punished myself with, but not weaker. Life had refined her the way pressure refines stone, less softness, more edge. The twins stood close to her legs, silent now, sensing tension the way children always do. Up close, certainty became unbearable. One child had my eyes. The other had my mother's mouth. No denial remained large enough to hide behind. Stay there, Elena said. Just 4 words. Not frightened. Not pleading. Command. I stopped. That was the answer to one of the questions that had been splitting open in me since the light changed. She had not vanished because she was careless, faithless, or cruel. A woman who meant to disappear forever would not turn back into danger. A woman who did not want the truth disturbed would keep walking. Elena had stopped because she was done running from being seen. Behind me, I heard Celeste's door open, then close with measured control. She did not come to my side. She stayed near the car, far enough to leave me exposed, close enough to hear every word. The cost shifted in that instant. This was no longer only about shock. It was about witness. Elena adjusted her grip on the twins' shoulders and looked directly at me. You don't get to walk up on them like that. The words landed harder than accusation. They were protection. Immediate, instinctive, unembarrassed. I didn't know they existed, I said. I know that now, she replied. The now struck me. Not before. Not all those years. Only now. A bus groaned past the intersection, washing us in diesel breath and reflected light. One of the twins leaned into Elena's coat. The other kept staring at me with the blunt, unearned trust children sometimes offer strangers who are not strangers at all. I had faced armed men with steadier nerves than the ones I carried in that moment. Then tell me why, I said. Elena's jaw tightened, and for a second I thought she would retreat again. Instead, she did the opposite. She crossed the remaining distance of truth by inches, not steps. Because the last time I saw what your world was becoming, I was pregnant. Silence. The kind that doesn't empty a place but crushes the air inside it. My mind rearranged old nights with violent precision. Missed calls. A final argument. Her refusal to explain. The car waiting outside her building that I had called protection. The men I had called loyal. The life I had told myself I could control. She had seen something in it that I had refused to name. Celeste spoke then, her voice low, but sharpened by clarity. She didn't leave a man. She fled a future. I turned toward her. She wasn't crying. Somehow that was worse. Her composure gave the sentence the weight of a verdict. Elena did not thank her. She did not need help carrying her own truth. I left because I was not going to raise children under the shadow of men who solve fear with force. I didn't know if you would choose them over that life. The traffic light changed, but none of us moved. Red bled across the wet pavement, across the hood of my car, across the faces of two children who had my eyes and Elena Whitmore's stillness. A horn sounded somewhere behind us, impatient and far away, but inside that suspended moment all I could hear was the thin rush of my own breathing and the final sentence she had laid at my feet. She had not left because she stopped loving me. She had left because she believed my world would poison what was innocent. Then one of the twins looked up at me fully for the first time. Not with wonder, not with fear, with recognition. The boy's chin tipped a fraction toward the silver signet ring on my hand, the one I had never taken off, the one Elena Whitmore used to twist around my finger when she was thinking. His small face tightened, as if a private calculation had just clicked into place. The girl followed his gaze, then reached into the pocket of her coat with the kind of determined care children use when guarding treasure. She pulled out a folded sheet of paper, softened by use, and held it toward Celeste Armand instead of me. That choice landed like a knife. Celeste Armand took it slowly. Street light glazed the paper gold as she unfolded it. I saw the sketch before she spoke. A charcoal drawing of a younger version of my face, rough but unmistakable, the line of my jaw, the scar near my brow, the same ring darkened in pencil. At the bottom, in Elena Whitmore's handwriting, were 4 words. Your father. If found. The room inside my chest went silent. I reached for the page, but Celeste Armand did not surrender it immediately. Her eyes lifted to mine first, searching, measuring, deciding whether the shock on my face was performance or truth. Whatever she saw there made her let go. The paper trembled once between my fingers. Elena, I said, and my own voice sounded older than I remembered. They knew enough to carry that. A gust of wind swept through the crosswalk, stirring the girl's curls against her cheeks. Elena Whitmore drew both children closer, her expression unchanged, but the weariness in it no longer looked temporary. It looked lived in. They know they have a father, she said. They know I left before they were born. They know there were men around you I did not trust. That is all. Not all. The dates hit me a second later, hard and precise. I did the math without meaning to, counting backward from their size, their height, the shape of their hands, the year she vanished, the month I tore half the city apart trying to find her, and told myself rage was grief with purpose. They were not just mine in blood. They had existed while I was still searching, still breaking doors, still calling in favors, still telling myself she had betrayed me. I looked at Elena Whitmore. You knew before you disappeared. Her silence was answer enough. Celeste Armand stepped back from me then, not dramatically, not loudly, but with a control that made it worse. A clean half step. Enough to show distance. Enough to make me feel it. You were engaged to me, she said. No accusation could have cut cleaner. I didn't know, I said. Elena Whitmore's jaw hardened. He didn't. That should have helped. It did not. Because the lie had already changed shape. I had not hidden children from Celeste Armand, but I had built a future with her on a grave of missing truth, and every promise I made now looked unstable under the weight of timing. If Elena Whitmore left pregnant and never told me, then someone else had known enough to help her vanish, enough to bury the trail, enough to decide I should never find my own children. The danger was no longer memory. It was design. I folded the drawing once, carefully, and crouched until I was eye level with the twins. Rain hissed against the windshield hard enough to blur the city into streaks of red and gold, and in that ruined mirror of light, I saw the first crack in the life I had been pretending was solid. The twins watched me with the grave patience only children with careful mothers seem to possess. I asked the only question I had any right to ask. "How old are you?" "5," one of them said. The other lifted the folded drawing from my hand and nodded, as if confirming a fact I should have understood the moment I stepped out of the car. 5. Not 4. Not almost 5. 5. The number struck with more force than any bullet ever had, because it did not wound flesh. It tore chronology open. 5 years ago, Elena Whitmore had disappeared without a goodbye I could trust, and months later, I had let grief harden into pride. 4 years ago, I met Celeste Armand at a charity gala and told myself survival was the same thing as moving on. 3 years ago, I put a ring on Celeste Armand's finger under chandelier light, while people applauded a future they did not understand. Now a child's voice had turned all of it unstable. Behind me, a car door shut. Not loud, not dramatic, just final. Celeste Armand stepped onto the wet street in cream heels already darkening at the edges. She did not come beside me. She stopped a few feet back, far enough to make the distance visible, close enough to hear everything. The city hummed around us, impatient and blind, but inside that small circle of crosswalk light, every sound thinned into tension. "You knew," she said. It was not aimed at Elena Whitmore. It was aimed at me, because betrayal always looks first for the nearest face. "I didn't," I said. My voice came out lower than I intended, controlled in the way men speak when control is all they have left. I stood, slowly, the twins still between Elena Whitmore and me like proof no one could argue with. I didn't know they existed. Celeste Armand's gaze shifted to the children, then to Elena Whitmore, then back to me. The diamond on her left hand caught the red traffic light and flashed like a warning signal. "You were taking me home," she said. "And now I'm standing in the rain learning that your past isn't past. It's alive. It's looking at me." Elena Whitmore didn't flinch. "They are not a weapon," she said quietly. "No," Celeste Armand replied, with a sharpness that surprised even me. "But they are a truth." The room went silent, except this room had no walls, only wet asphalt and strangers pretending not to stare. I had walked through boardrooms, funerals, and blood-soaked warehouses with less dread than I felt in that crosswalk. Because this was not a threat I could crush. This was judgment, and it had arrived in small shoes and matching raincoats. I looked at Celeste Armand and saw something changing behind her eyes. Not anger alone, but arithmetic. Dates. Gaps. Lies she now feared had been hidden in plain sight. "You should go home," I told her. Wrong sentence. The hurt that crossed her face was immediate, clean, and deserved. "That's what you have for me." I took a breath, tasted rain, and understood too late that command had no place here. "I'm saying this is not a conversation for a sidewalk." "No," Celeste Armand said. "It's a conversation for before an engagement ring." The twins pressed closer to Elena Whitmore. One small hand disappeared into the sleeve of her coat. Protective. Instinctive. They had no reason to trust me, and suddenly the cost of that landed where pride used to live. Celeste Armand stepped nearer then, not to me, but to the truth itself. "Did you leave him after you found out?" Elena Whitmore held her gaze. "I left before I was showing. I left because I would not raise children inside a world built on fear. I told myself distance would keep them safe. And did it?" Celeste Armand asked. For a moment, the rain was the only thing speaking, tapping its cold verdict across the glass while no one inside the car moved. Celeste Armand's question stayed between us like a blade laid flat on a table. Elena Whitmore did not answer right away. She looked down at the twins, then out through the windshield, as if the memory she had kept buried all these years was standing in the street waiting to be let in. "No," Elena Whitmore said at last. "It did not keep them safe." Her voice did not shake. That was what made it worse. I had heard fear in many forms in my life. Men begging, rivals lying, traitors bargaining for one more breath. This was different. This was the sound of someone admitting that the sacrifice that cost her everything had still failed. The twins stayed close to her, one pressed against her side, the other holding the damp sleeve of her coat in a small fist. I watched that grip and understood, with a kind of slow violence, that they had learned early not to trust the world to hold still. Celeste Armand was the one who moved first. She reached into her bag, pulled out a folded cream envelope, and held it toward Elena Whitmore. "This fell out when you picked up the pharmacy bag at the curb," she said. I saw the seal and waited. Elena Whitmore froze before taking it. Water-dark eyelashes lowered. Her fingers broke the flap with care that looked almost ceremonial, but the second she unfolded the page, the color left her face so fast it was like watching a candle go out. "What is it?" I asked. Elena Whitmore kept staring at the paper. "I never told you why I disappeared," she said, but she was speaking to me without looking at me. Not the real reason. Celeste Armand's eyes narrowed, not in cruelty, but in focus. "Then tell it now." Elena Whitmore folded the letter once, then again, as if making it smaller could make it less dangerous. "I did leave because of your world," she said. "That part was true. But I did not leave only because I was afraid of what the twins would grow up around." She lifted her eyes to mine then, and for the first time since the crosswalk, I saw not distance, not anger, but the old wound underneath both. "I left because someone came to me 3 weeks after we ended. Someone from inside your house." The car went still in a new way. I felt my jaw lock. "Who?" "I never saw a face clearly," Elena Whitmore said. "A woman's voice. Gloves. A car with no plates." She knew things no outsider could know. Where I lived, where I worked, when I would be alone. She told me if I stayed in your life, I would bury children before I ever got to name them. The twins looked up, not fully understanding the words, but understanding the silence around them. I stopped breathing for half a second. "She knew I was pregnant," Elena Whitmore said. "And I had told no one. Not even you." A hard pulse hit behind my eyes. There are moments when a lie collapses so completely that truth enters like a gunshot. This was one of them. Elena Whitmore had not vanished because she was faithless. She had been hunted before the twins had even drawn breath. Celeste Armand turned to me slowly. "Someone inside your world knew before you did." I stared at the rain crawling down the windshield in jagged silver lines. There were very few people who could have learned that kind of secret, fewer still who would weaponize it. The list was short enough to fit in a hand and lethal enough to poison a city. Elena Whitmore looked back at the letter in her lap. "I thought it was over after I left. I changed cities, changed jobs, kept the twins off records where I could. Then 6 months ago, I started seeing the same black sedan near their school." Her voice lowered. "This letter confirms it." "Confirms what?" Rain stitched silver lines across the windshield as Elena Whitmore unfolded the letter with hands that looked steady only from a distance. Up close, I could see the tremor in her fingers, the strain in her jaw, the way survival had taught her to speak without panic even when panic was all that remained. The paper was creased, damp at one corner, and stamped with the seal of a private lab in Lower Manhattan. When she passed it forward, Celeste Armand took it first, not me. That changed more than the air inside the car. Celeste Armand scanned the page once, then again, slower the second time. Her face did not collapse. It sharpened. "It confirms the twins are Roman veils," she said. The words landed without drama, which made them hit harder. No one gasped. No one reached for comfort. The rain kept time on the roof, and somewhere down the block a siren passed like a warning too late to matter. I took the letter from her hand and read the lines myself. Paternity, 99.99%. Collection dates from years ago. Retesting completed 2 weeks earlier after an unauthorized records inquiry triggered an alert Elena Whitmore had paid for under another name. Beneath the clinical language was something uglier than scandal. Someone had searched for my children. Elena Whitmore looked at me, but not with hope. The sedan wasn't random. Whoever pulled those records knew where to start. Celeste Armand turned in her seat to face her fully. "Then we don't handle this quietly anymore." That was the shift. Not anger. Not jealousy. Strategy. I looked at her. "Public attention puts the twins at risk." "Silence already did," Celeste Armand said. Her voice was low, controlled, and colder than mine had been all night. "Until then, This had been a private wound. Mine, Elena Whitmore's, the twins by inheritance. Celeste Armand made it political in one sentence. If someone was moving through sealed records and circling children, darkness was no longer protection. Darkness was cover. She lifted her phone. I know 3 reporters who live for blood in expensive rooms. One leak about falsified access to protected records, and every set of eyes in this city turns outward instead of toward the twins. Elena Whitmore stared at her. You do that? Celeste Armand did not blink. I won't let children become leverage so adults can preserve appearances. The room inside me that had once been built for certainty went still. I had expected fury from her, maybe humiliation, maybe a clean exit with the door slammed hard enough to deserve it. What I had not expected was for her to become the first person that night willing to burn her own reputation, to draw fire away from children who proved I had betrayed her long before I ever gave her a ring. Do it, I said. She already was. Her thumbs moved once, twice, 3 times. Names. Screenshots. A cropped image of the lab seal. A line carefully worded. Protected minors, illegal records access, powerful families, immediate risk. Not my name. Not Elena Whitmore's. Not the twins. Just enough bait to send the city's appetite running in the wrong direction. Then my phone lit up. One message from a councilman who owed me favors. Another from an attorney I kept for emergencies. Then 6 more in less than a minute. The leak had moved faster than rain-down glass. Somebody with reach had already connected the lab, the inquiry, and me. Celeste Armand exhaled once. Too fast. Elena Whitmore's face drained. That means the person behind it was waiting. Outside, headlights slid across the wet street and stopped behind us. Black sedan. Low beam. Familiar shape. No mistake now. I opened the door. Don't, Elena Whitmore said. But this was no rescue pattern, no alley ambush, no instinctive violence to settle fear with force. The war had changed. Whoever sat in that car wanted pressure, exposure, panic. They wanted me dragged into the light while the twins remained fixed in the crosshairs. Celeste Armand caught my wrist before I stepped into the rain. Rain drummed harder on the roof, dense and mechanical, turning the parked sedan behind us into a smear of black steel and pale glare. Celeste Armand's fingers stayed locked around my wrist, not pleading now, not trembling, but making a decision I had not made fast enough. The look she gave me carried none of the softness that had once made our engagement seem inevitable. It carried judgment. Elena Whitmore still held the letter half open in her lap, the paper wet at the edges where rain had blown in through the cracked door, and the twins slept in the back seat with the impossible trust only children possess when they have no idea how close fear has parked itself to them. Not like this, Celeste Armand said. 3 words. Clean as a blade. I turned to her, ready to pull free, ready to step into the rain and force the night to show me its face. But the war in front of us was not built for guns or fists. The letter had made that plain enough. Confirm paternity publicly. Appear by morning. No police. No private retaliation. Or the truth goes where children can never outrun it. Elena Whitmore looked at me through the dim interior light. If you go out there, they get exactly what they want. The room inside my chest went still. For years, I had controlled damage by becoming larger than it, colder than it, more lethal than the men creating it. That instinct had built my empire and poisoned nearly everything human inside it. Tonight, for the first time, force was the trap. Exposure was the weapon. And the only way to break it was to surrender something I had spent my entire life protecting. My name. My silence. My version of control. Celeste Armand let go of my wrist only after she knew I understood. Then she reached across me, pulled the door shut, and looked straight at the rearview mirror where the sedan waited. They want a spectacle, she said. So make them lose ownership of it. I stared at her. The engagement had been cracking for days. But in that moment, she was the one who moved the board. Not me. Not Elena Whitmore. Celeste Armand, the woman who had every personal reason to walk away, was the one who saw the only path left. Go public first, she said. On your terms. Before sunrise. Elena Whitmore's breath caught. If he does that, everything changes. Yes, Celeste Armand said, eyes still on mine. That's the point. Silence pressed against the windows. Then I understood the final price. Not money. Not reputation in some abstract sense. Not one more bloody correction buried in darkness. If I stepped into daylight and acknowledged Elena Whitmore and the twins before the blackmailers could force it, I would detonate the structure I had built around my life. Every ally would recalculate. Every rival would smell fracture. Every promise tied to my engagement would collapse in public. I looked at Celeste Armand. You know what that means for us. Her face changed, but only by a fraction. Enough for truth to enter it. I know. Elena Whitmore lowered the letter. Romanvale, don't do this because you feel guilty. I met her eyes. I'm doing it because hiding them is what put them here. No one answered. The twins shifted softly in the back seat. One small sneaker pressed against the leather seat. A tiny sound, almost a sigh, rose and vanished beneath the rain. That was the sound that decided it. Not threat, not pride, not blackmail. A child breathing in a world adults had already damaged. I took out my phone. My hand was steady now. One call to my attorney. One secure line to a newsroom that had owed me silence for years. One recorded statement, delivered without ornament, without threat, without any shield left between the truth and the city waiting to feast on it. My voice sounded stranger than gunfire. My name is Roman Vale. Elena Whitmore is the mother of my children. The twins are mine. The line went live before I could reconsider, and for the first time in years, I did not use fear to control the room. I used the truth. Rain slid down the windshield in silver veins while my voice traveled into news desks, legal offices, police archives, and private phones that had spent too long pretending Elena Whitmore had simply disappeared because she chose to. She had not chosen any of it. She had been cornered, threatened, and forced into silence while carrying what should have been my first responsibility. The city had built 1,000 lies around my name, but this time I stripped them down myself. Beside me, Celeste Armand let go of my wrist slowly. That hurt more than if she had struck me. She turned toward the windshield, watching the red wash of brake lights blur across the street where I had seen Elena and the twins only minutes before. Her face was calm in the way marble is calm, cool and beautiful, and already separating itself from the hand that touched it. I knew that look. It was not rage. Rage begs to be answered. This was clarity. You should go to them, she said. Just that. No accusation. No dramatic cruelty. No last attempt to be chosen. The silence after her words felt heavier than any threat I had ever survived. I looked at her, really looked at her, and understood what she had done for me in those last minutes. She had stopped me from charging into chaos like a man trying to reclaim property. She had forced me to tell the truth before I reached Elena, before I frightened the twins, before I made the whole scene about my power instead of their safety. She had protected children who were not hers from the damage of adult pride. I won't lie to you again, I said. You can't marry me, Celeste Armand answered. The sentence landed clean, merciless, deserved. I closed my eyes for 1 second, no longer to hide, but to accept. The engagement had not broken in a single dramatic moment. It had cracked with every omission, every delayed confession, every time I mistook control for protection. Now it finally gave way. I took the ring from my finger and set it in the center console between us. The metal clicked against the plastic like a verdict. I'm sorry, I said. I know, she replied. Then she reached for the door handle. But before she stepped out into the rain, she looked back at me one last time. If you mean anything you said tonight, don't win them with money. Don't win them with fear. Show up. Stay. That's the only thing children believe. And that was the final mercy she gave me. She left without another word, heels striking wet pavement, shoulders straight, disappearing beneath the hard glow of the street lamp like a woman walking away from a fire she refused to feed. I watched until the rain took her shape apart. Then I drove. Not fast, not reckless, just straight. I found Elena Whitmore 3 blocks away beneath the awning of a closed pharmacy, the twins tucked close on either side of her, all 3 of them damp at the edges, tired, and still too alert for a quiet night. She saw my car and stiffened at once. Not because she feared an enemy coming for her, because she feared me making things harder. So I stopped 6 feet away and got out with empty hands. The rain had softened to a cold mist. Water clung to Elena Whitmore's hair and darkened the shoulders of her coat. The twins looked up at me with the solemn, searching stare children have when they sense that the adults around them are standing on a fault line. I did not step closer. Elena Whitmore, I said, my voice rougher now, stripped of performance. I told them the truth. Her eyes sharpened. All of it. All of what matters first. that they're mine, that you were never the liar in this.